with another art bite. I'm really excited about this series, and I'm also really excited about this lesson. Quite a few years ago I went over to France and we went to the prehistoric caves that dated back 35,000 years. And I was so enthralled by the caves, I just had to try painting sort of an impression of what we experienced. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm just going to give you some ideas on how you can have some fun with some of the lovely textures, some watercolor crayons. There's even some webbing spray in here. Just really, really a fun experience. Oops, and this one here, I actually took a Gouda bottle, which I talked about in an earlier web bite, and drew these animals on with the little Gouda bottle before I started. This one here, I actually drizzled the image on with a stick in a jar of gloss paint and just let the paint drizzle. And that was kind of fun. But the one I'm going to do today is going to be different again. Make sure you're on the front of your paper. Get your watermark. I'm using Arches 140-pound paper. And I'm going to use a black webbing spray. And I'm not going to use much of it, but I'm just going to sort of get the paper away from being so virginal here. So just a little look at that. You would not believe what the walls in a cave look like. They're full of, leaking water and green stuff that's growing. And then right in the middle are these incredible paintings. So what I'm going to do is start by wetting the back. Just using my nice big 4-inch hockey brush so this goes really fast. Wet the back and then wet the front. And as you probably know, the reason I do this is it keeps the paper flat and it keeps it wet longer. Now these are so fine. This is dry, so I can just go ahead and go right over it. The colors we're going to use are very earthy. Now I'm going to use some store-bought colors like quinacridone burnt orange instead of burnt sienna. But if you want to, you could use burnt sienna. That would probably actually be more authentic. So what I'm going to do is I always start my paints by dampening them with my sprayer because I like my paint dry. I don't like to work with wet paint. And so what I'm going to do is start with some earthy color called raw sienna. I'm not going to use any bright colors like Winsor yellow. It's just way too intense. I'm just going to throw this paint down. This happens to be the Winsor Newton, which is my favorite raw sienna. And my whole premise here today is to put the darker darks up here on the top and the bottom, keep just a little bit lighter in the center. It's what I call a freeze. So we're just going to start here with some of these colors. Now the next color I'm going to go to would be my quinacridone burnt orange. And remember, this is a new color. It's made by Daniel Smith. I love the color. And I use it, I don't even have burnt sienna on my palette anymore. Notice how I'm not just painting these straight across. I'm trying to get a nice irregular edge. So I'm just basically throwing these colors down. I like to get the corners dark. You've probably figured that out already. Now when I put blue, cobalt blue on top of this color, I get beautiful grays. So now I'm going to take some cobalt blue and just go ahead and paint it here and there to create some lovely grays. And right now I'm working to build up the dark on the top, the dark on the bottom. I'm leaving the center with a lot of white. I want a lot of white in there. Again, keep this as irregular as you can. Yeah, throw a little here and there. But no mixed color. I did all the mixing on the page. And then now we want to think about creating some texture, maybe even drawing in a few animals to get started here. See, I like to work with the colored pencils, watercolor pencils. So I'm going to get a few out here, and I think I'm going to draw in an animal or two. Now, in the caves, there were different groups of prehistoric artists that would come in and draw on the cave, and then 10,000 years later, more artists would come in and draw over those pictures because the light was so bad they couldn't really see what they were doing. So there's a lot of drawings that go right on top of each other. It's kind of weird. So I'm just going to pretend I'm a cave artist right now and draw in some of these animals. And see, I want it to be really wet. Seeing as this is a watercolor pencil, see, the color is just going to soften up. I just want to get started with what might look like some animals. This is a great subject, by the way, to do with kids. I've done a lot of it. See, now there might be another animal on top of that animal, done completed years later. So I like to interlock these animals. And then sometimes just to make some scribbly lines going through. Interlocking, always interlocking. Another thing you see in the caves, and this fascinated me, and when we asked the guide about it, they really had no answer, but there's these red spots that are in the cave. So I'm going to use some Scarlet Lake and some quinacridone coral, and I'm just going to put these red spots around. They think it might be some kind of keeping a tally, maybe how many animals they killed, who knows. But there's these red spots. I love it. And a lot of times you see these red colors going through the picture too. So you can see already that's adding some interest, some excitement. Now I also want to add some texture to this. So I'm going to use some gauze. And the gauze, it's a medical gauze that I get. It'd be very difficult to find it in a store. It's all cotton and it's used to set broken bones. So it's real easy to open up and play with. So the first thing I have to do is open it all the way to one layer of gauze. This is not an easy task. There, one layer, look at that. And then just using my scissors, I'm going to take it and just simply stretch this through the picture randomly, set it down, pull it, and just create some interesting linear shapes. There, and you can see it's already absorbing some of the color. Because it's cotton, it just absorbs that color into it. Nice. Now that will be taken off later. And then I'm also going to do just a little bit of this up here. Stretch it down, kind of connect a little bit with this other gauze. Just enough to create some little bit more interest. Touching off the edge of the paper, very important. Spray into it so it absorbs the color. Now we're going to have some fun. We've got the start. These animals, of course, are going to get much darker later, but I think it's good to get started with it. Now I'm going to go back to my 1.5 inch brush, and I'm going to start coming in with darker values of these same colors. So we're going to paint some quinacridone burnt orange on here. And tip the board a little bit, get some movement looking like the drips that you see. I might even put a little gold. I do like the quinacridone gold. It's a little bit brighter than the raw sienna. So what the heck, let's put a little gold on here too. And then the dark, to darken this I use cobalt blue. And I mostly put it over my orange. If I put the cobalt over the yellow, it's going to turn green. A little bit of green is good. There's a lot of green in the caves, mold and so on. But mostly I just want it to be gray. And now we're ready to think about adding wax paper. The wax paper creates a rock-like texture. And I can't tell you how much fun doing this for the first time was. The ideas just kept coming. Oh, let's try this, let's try this. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to create some rock-like textures. Again, not a straight piece of paper. That would be a disaster. Keep everything irregular. Rip it into some interesting textures. Sometimes I even like a few straight edges. I may play that up. Now for the first time I'm going to try some mixed color. I'm going to take some quin orange, some cobalt blue, and I'm going to just let this go underneath here to create some more darks. Now we're getting brave. So with these irregular pieces, see how with the openings, I can put color in between those openings and get it darker. And don't wimp out. I'm wimping out here. I gotta go darker. Come on. I love these darks. And we're also ready to think about a little salt. So on some of these edges here, and be sure you add the salt at this stage, because when you put salt down, you no longer can put wax paper on top of it. So now I'm ready to do the same thing on this side, and to develop this light in the middle, dark on the top and the bottom. So if I want to now, I can come in, add some of the gold. Add more of the quinacridone burnt orange. Ooh, nice and dark. You can see when you paint on the gauze, it gets darker. That's a good thing. Put some more dark, especially in the corner. I like my corners dark. Now I'm ready to come in with more cobalt. You notice I have the board tipped. I want these colors to start running, do their thing. And now I'm ready to come in again with the wax paper. You can see now we're starting to get those beautiful darks. That's what we want. So again, randomly pick where you want some rocky shapes. It's all kind of hit and miss. That's what I love about this. It's just such a creative way to work. Sometimes I'll even pull a little bit of this wax paper down here Get some nice rocky textures down here too. The whole wall is rock, obviously. Again, a little bit of salt. Salt's really good. There's little white marks all over these walls. If you don't want hard edges like that, just come in and wet them with your brush. Sometimes a few hard edges are good. And then it's a matter of coming in with some more dark. So quinacridone burnt orange, cobalt blue. If you want to add your own colors, that's fine. These are real safe, easy colors to work with. And again, I want to get this nice and dark here. I want to get some of those drips coming down. So we're doing pretty good here. I think I'll, I went to a little craft store one day and I couldn't believe it. I found these little hands. And in almost all the caves I visited in southwestern France, what they would do is they would have the women hold their hand up there, and the men would put manganese dioxide into their mouth and spit this out around their hands. So their hands weren't a positive, like I'm going to get a positive thing here. Theirs were negative, going around the hand. But I'm going to do it anyway. See, a couple hands here and there. I thought this was the coolest little thing. Now, if you want to get negative, which you can, what you do is you just stamp a little masking on here and stamp it on before you start the picture. Then when you paint the picture, you're going to get the little white hands. But we don't have it the right way. You can see these are going to disappear. I'll do them over again. This will just be a... Okay, now it's time to think about drawing some more animals. Ooh, this is the fun part. And the scale of the animals is funny. They have little animals, big animals, fat animals, animals with legs. They're just there's no, and then just lots of lovely lines. This is a picture of the Peshmeral cave. This is huge. This is like 10 feet long. You can see the red spots, lots of red. And you can see many, many drawings on top of each other. It's very nice. Here's another one. Here you can see the drips coming down from the ceiling. So sometimes I'm not very good at just drawing animals, so I'll actually look at some of these animals and use them as a guide. And if your animals are starting to look too perfect, don't forget your fine mister. And when I'm drawing with the watercolor pencil, that's what's so cool. So you can soften those edges. And animals can be coming, overlapping. Some of the animals are red. I don't have red, but I'm going to use orange just to draw some interesting lines. I like to make these real busy. So now it's time to just let this dry, and then I'll come in later and draw some more animals. All right, well, this is exciting. I've been dying to take off all this stuff to see what kind of textures. Oh, look at that. So it did exactly what I hoped, and that is to create what looks like rocks. And of course, this makes lines, and Isn't that interesting how the cobalt blue came up to the surface? So we'll just get rid of this, oops, some of this extra stuff here. Pull her off. Ooh, I even like that straight line. So this is all opportunities waiting for you to do something creative with. I usually get rid of the salt, get rid of anything that's there. So there's no collage on this. Isn't that interesting? All these beautiful textures with no collage. So, so far we just have wax paper, gauze, a little webbing spray, and what I want to do now is I want to create some darks, further darks, either the top or the bottom or both. And then I want to add some animals, and I'm not always real good at adding these animals freehand, so I cheated. You can see I drew some of these animals in using a pencil. So we're ready to get started. I love finishing paintings. There's that great feeling of accomplishment, and maybe you came up with something new. I'm going to use my script brush. This is a narrow brush that, it's not a round brush, and so you've got long bristles and it really holds a lot of paint. And I want the, I think I'm just going to paint on the dry surface and get more control, and then I'll spray into it as I need to soften the edges. So I'm going to take my color quinacridone burnt orange, and I'm going to mix it with some cobalt blue, and that's going to give me a nice brown. And if I want this even darker, which I will in some areas, I'm going to add a little ultramarine blue to the mixture. Okay, so here we go. We've got this cute little horse. He's got a little mouth. I'll tell you, these cave artists were just totally amazing. I still can't get over, you know, until you actually go there and experience this. It's just awesome. And then he's got this mane coming down here. So I'm actually using some cave artist 35,000 years ago. I'm using his idea. And most cave artists just did lines. So these would be just lines. But I just recently went to this really cool cave, and they had a lot of negative painting. Hard to believe, but they did. So you can do anything you want. Negative, positive, just lines. And what I want to do now, before this dries, I want to take and come in and do a little softening with a sprayer. Remember, this has got to look like it was painted 35,000, 25,000, 100,000 years ago. So just a little bit of misting on that will soften the edges and give that older look. And then I'm going to take some pure quinacridone burnt orange. And I think I'm even going to wet this first. Just come in here and wet it a little bit. And just give it, I'm going to do what I would call positive painting here. I'm actually going to make the animal darker than the background it's next to. And again, this is just simply quinacridone burnt orange. It's my substitute for burnt sienna. Oh, this is fun. This is fun. I hope you enjoy your cave painting. Now I'm going to take and paint into this with some of the wet, dark color, because I do want more soft edges. And the other thing I want more reds in here. Remember I mentioned that if you take alizarin crimson, quinacridone burnt orange, and just come in and I would have to wet some of these areas. I'll wet that just a little bit more. This one I'll paint into a wet surface. But they had all these incredible spots on the wall. They're not sure what they were for, but they also had these red lines all over the place. So I'm real big on the red spots. But they have to be soft. So just spray into them so they look more like that. I might even give him a little dose of red. Okay, I'm going to pick up again my quinacridone burnt orange, a little cobalt blue, and this is a woolly mammoth. Oh man, they're just cool, let's face it. All these animals probably don't even exist anymore. Now remember, I sprayed into this. So this one's going to be a little bit softer. I might spray a little bit more. This one I did dry and sprayed. This one I did by spraying it so it's a little bit wet. And just let's get some of those fun. So this is what I would do. I'm not going to take too much more of your time, but simply draw in more animals, overlap the animals. I've got another one drawn in here. And then don't forget our little hands. They, honest to God, hands were a big thing. They did these all over caves all over the world, not just in France. But the idea that these hands, they were everywhere. And I've got some great photographs here I have to share with you. This is a cave. Look at that. Look at the hands. Aren't they magnificent? Look at the colors. Look at the reds. And this one too. I just love this one. Some of the hands are light against a dark. Some are dark against something they sprayed that was light. See the reds again? I mean, these are incredible. So don't forget, got to have some hands. You could even cut them out of a little piece of styrofoam. Just get creative. Now, on these back areas, I still want to get darker. So I'm just going to take a second and do a little bit of this same mixture, quin orange, cobalt blue. Maybe I'll even put a little ultramarine blue in there. A little more, make it even darker. And one of the things I want to do is I want to create some even darker shapes. Give me a minute here. Cheat sheet. I love this. So just by coming in and creating, which would be the kind of the dark shadows up here at the top of the cave, and it really helps frame in this beautiful frieze. So by keeping the center light, keeping your darkest darks up here, maybe some spatter, but I really, really like coming in and creating these extra darks pretty much along the top in the bottom. So all I do is kind of fill in some of these shapes here. They're already pretty interesting. Here's one I can cross over. Here's one I can get a little bit darker. To me, this looks better already. This gets to be kind of busy. This feels a little more coordinated. And for my very last death-defying act, I am going to take these Caran d'Ache crayons. They're water-soluble. They're very expensive, but they're real high quality. They're made in Switzerland. One of the things you frequently see are these shapes that spiral around. And I also like just coming in with a line, like a white line, having some fun. Maybe doing another spiral or two. And every culture did this. I can't believe it. I did this one time with little second and third graders, and I never showed them this or anything, and they were doing these spirals. It's like do 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 do. I just don't know why they were doing it, but they did. So I almost always do a few of these, a few more lines, and that's it. Hope you enjoy.